actually don't have a project to support them anymore. The Karen project has folded, and so the Central Asian countries are missing some deployment of eduroam, and it's unclear how, like, no one looks after them, and depending on how you cut Asia, they're sometimes included and they're sometimes not. Like, you are an RIR, so you don't include Central Asia.
No, it's not within APNIC region.
No, so there's
it's the ripe.
It's the ripe region, but also just because you're in the ripe region doesn't mean you're in the géant region. And so there are some economies that end up out, was that Farhan?
Yeah, you miss Middle East. There are some Middle East country which is part of Asia too.
Yes, and they're sometimes covered by ASREN membership, and yeah, and then sometimes they're also Asia. So the issue with who is Asia, yeah, it becomes a little bit tortured depending on how the world was divided up. So you have the regional REN sort of groupings. You've got the regional internet registry groupings. You've got the UN classification of territories, and they all, disagree. I mean, I think if you look at the Asia region, there's some strange ARIN countries that pop up. ARIN being the North American Regional Internet Registry, that pop up as belonging to them, but you'll also find some strange territories that are in APNIC's region that you might regard as, being African even, right? Depending on, just because they're small island developing states or other things. So and so at the moment we think that these are the pilots: Bhutan, Cambodia, Afghanistan. Afghanistan sort of dropped off the list. We've got some people that are eduroam curious in Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea. Myanmar's gone silent of recent years in both the Federation and eduroam front. Vietnam somehow never got around to completing eduroam, but I think they were a supporter of a ZEEP project once upon a time, but I think their infrastructure has now died, so they've gone backwards in time. Mongolia started a deployment. And although I've got the Pacific, and the Pacific is not a country, there are a lot of Pacific economies that are absent of an NREN or absent of support from the regional RENs. So as a result, they're not covered. I'll add Bangladesh to this slide, so when the slides get updated. But Vlad, I see you're online.
Thanks.
I'll stop sharing as soon as I work out how to stop sharing. And if you want to present your slide deck and your summary.
Thank you. Yes, it's past 5 p.m. here, and I'll have to run soon for child pickup, but I think I can still squeeze the update here. So thanks for putting me first. Just the overview. RENs is the NREN and the national roaming operator for New Zealand. Been running eduroam, my guess was since 2010, so since before my time at RENs. On the technical side, we have two free radius servers serving the NRO needs. They hide behind two Anycast addresses, which can be served by both, preferred on each side. So we appear to be serving two live IP addresses, even when one of them is down. And we've had this set up for ages. And for also a long time, we've been running an eduroam portal based on DGNRO by GRNet. And yeah, just by using it, I became a code contributor to DGNRO. And it's a useful thing. We collect eduroam usage stats in Splunk, and that gives us nice fancy graphs. So if I look at the services we provide to our members, we now have eduroam visitor access, thanks SurfNet, and we have it deployed. We've talked to members about it. We don't have any real use on it yet. Don't know why. been trying to convince members. Somehow that's still waiting for takeoff. We are using Jean's managed IDP and putting some of our tiny members there, and it works for them great, much better than having to manage a service they don't understand and running a radio server themselves. We are heavily rolling out CAT, and that helps streamline the configuration members put on their devices. So that's another thanks, Jan. And with the usage that's collected in Splunk, we give fancy graphs to members, and that works great to let the members see the value they get from eduroam. And also, if the funders get the graph, they see, oh, eduroam, that's not a thing in the corner, it's big. Now, our membership covers 8 universities, large research organizations. New Zealand has a lot of quite small research organizations, like 100 staff in total, among them 20 scientists, 1 IT person. So these are our random members, and they get to use eduroam. Now, where eduroam is getting big is through the polytechnics, which is altogether some 250,000 users. And we also have government agencies in the education sector, where they still are within the broad remit of eduroam. For our current projects, the government got really excited about eduroam and wants to use eduroam to address digital equity, where we have many students from poor backgrounds, where they just can't do schoolwork at home. The schools are shifting heavily to online learning. Let's do things on laptops. But for the students, if they don't have connectivity at home, or home is not a safe place or good place to learn, they need to be on the go. We are rolling out eduroam to all of them with the backing of Ministry of Education. So all high school students will get eduroam accounts. That's 500,000 students. And to give them a place to study and do homework, it will be libraries. We have a proof of concept live now for some of the libraries, and quite soon, February 11th, it's going live across New Zealand. Among the libraries, we might have the southernmost eduroam location in the world on the Stewart Island. It looks like there's a location in Antarctica which beats it, but close to that. But the further places to study, the indigenous people of New Zealand, Maori, have their traditional meeting and learning places, marae, like communal space. So we are working with them to get all of their marae connected. And that should help a lot with on the digital equity side. There should be more locations as well, but this is a big project backed by Ministry of Education and will increase eduroam visibility a lot and will make a difference. Other projects in flight is just extending the reach and coverage of eduroam. Universities have been for long service providers in eduroam, but they haven't been properly using it and not rolling out configuration to all of their users, sometimes even restricting who would actually get accepted on the radio server. But we've been working with, like, if you make eduroam the default network, you have eduroam for your own users on campus and configure it for all of them, and when they travel, it will just work because it's already configured on the devices. So trying to get it, it's still not there, but working on it, and CAT is helping with that. Trying to broaden the reach within the GLAM sector. The Auckland War Memorial Museum has been for long an NRN member. We are trying to get them onto eduroam. It's a fairly prominent location in Auckland. Work in progress. And another big thing in the pipeline is GovRoam. Government is also noticed, like, oh, that's a nice concept, eduroam. So can we do it for government agencies as well? And we are starting a proof of concept. I created basically a copy of the server infrastructure we have just to do the same thing separately for GovRoam. We are now ready for them to get engaged with the proof of concept, and we'll see how it goes. Given the push the government has on being efficient, this could help with the efficiency. where they are collocating multiple departments, just being able to access the services in the shared space. And if this all goes well, it would make it very visible across all branches of government that we as the NRN provide a really useful service, at least one of the service all of government employees will know. So that's what we are working on. Any questions?
Yeah, there's a question from Chihu, just getting a microphone to him.
What can you do to encourage the university users to use eduroam?
It's primarily we need to encourage the IT departments to make it visible. First step, historically, some universities were blocking eduroam from their own users on campus. So it's like you authenticate to our normal Wi-Fi, and eduroam is for visitors because they were charging for internet use, charging their own internal users. It's like, okay, visitors can write free, but not our own users. They finally sorted that out, but it's about convincing the IT departments that eduroam is a good idea for the default network and to push the configuration onto all managed devices. And that should help with the uptake. So it's more going through the IT departments than trying to reach individual users. I think the individual users will go by word of mouth. They're like, hey, it's great.
Yeah, I actually, when I was with one of the universities, I tried to advocate to make eduroam as the default for all the users. I think the current generation of the AP equipment can allow, like when you log in with your home domain, that you would connect to one VLAN, but if you connect from other domain, you connect to other VLAN.
Yeah,
or something.
exactly. This capability was the driver for many of them to say, okay, we can do that now. So University of Canterbury, where I was based, yep, they did.
Yeah, maybe we should promote this kind of the usage for the in-campus Wi-Fi offering.
I mean, we've certainly promoted eduroam at home for a very long time. And the main reason is you don't want a user roaming and being away from their help desk the first time they're trying to connect to Wi-Fi, because then they don't have the instructions. They don't know what their uni specific. So if they use it at home, then it will work when they roam. But if they've never used it at home, if they've come to Apan, for instance, and then they have to try and find out what their local settings are, and they Google and they find the wrong settings, they find old settings, or they might have to do something particular for their device, it's the wrong time to try and convince someone. And if you're at a campus that has no guest access, then you can't connect your laptop at all. And so that's the wrong deployment process. But that's an evolutionary thing, and hopefully we can solve that because the technology is in place now for a very long time.
Yes.
And campuses, while they do charge their own students, I think they're increasingly getting out of that market. It's becoming more problematic.
The ISPs have undercut them, so they are. And sorry, I'll have to go now. Child pick up. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Vlad.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, so next up, Hideaki, do you want to present? You just happen to be next in my slides, but it could be. Do you want to talk about changes since last time you talked about eduroam and particularly things on the city roam and open roaming front?
Yeah, I don't have a big difference. So the scale is different. So as I talked about city roam before, we are deploying city roam nationwide, and one of the most beneficial point is that the city roam is a system accommodating both eduroam and open roaming. And we have some more roaming systems included. And the big news was that the Tokyo metropolitan government has decided to deploy city roam in Tokyo region, and they have already deployed many at many places, and they have a plan to deploy more than 1,000 locations, and that is the recent big news. And another place is Hakodate in Hokkaido. They have introduced open roaming. In fact, it's a city roam based, and they introduced the system to their municipality Wi-Fi, so the residents can enjoy surfing securely, and the automatic connection is possible, of course. And at the same time, the eduroam SSID is available, so that helps students and staff very much. So in Japan, we are pushing the eduroam and open roaming combined architecture. So that's I think that's all from Japan. So may I go on to the compliance statement? So eduroam compliance statement version 2 has been released, and there's the main difference is basically the word alignment. So some expressions were not well aligned with the recent technologies. So we have fixed the document. And so the roaming operators need to sign the eduroam compliance statement again, and I think the old roaming operators have been informed. Okay, that's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Hideaki. Since we're dealing with the online people, Farhan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, maybe I just highlight about open roaming a bit from it. So the Tokyo city roam has been helpful for us to troubleshoot whether our open roaming setup is correct or not. So in fact, I set up it in Wi-Fi phone. So when at home, it's connected using open roaming, using the ID from Tokyo Wi-Fi. All right, so yeah, I want to share my slide. Give me a moment. Okay, so basically this is the kind of last year's slide, but still useful, I believe, especially to one of the alternative way to set up eduroam in your federation infrastructure. And also, basically, this is one of the biggest deployment model in Malaysia, where we try to unify the authentication method to one using identity federation. So basically, I just reuse the slide from the previous Fire Expand project. So basically, I think the point here is basically to show how as the open roaming, eduroam operator, how you can either simplify, help to simplify the deployment of eduroam or offer eduroam IDP as a service to improve coverage and also the users of the eduroam service in your country. And we use the identity federation to authenticate the user and create the eduroam credential in form of digital certificate or profile after authentication is successful. And the users shall use the eduroam credential to access the eduroam later on. Okay, so I think I can skip this. I think most of you already know what eduroam is. Okay, so let's have a look on the challenges in operating eduroam IDP from the IDP point of view. So managing an eduroam IDP, which is the radius server, can be a non-trivial task, depending how complex your setup or how difficult it is to configure your radius server software, particularly in an organization that does not have an expert in radius setup or have limited number of IT staff. So this has become a big challenge in deploying eduroam in organization. So the current process setup is not ideal to run eduroam IDP, for example, such as no or limited public IP, which is true, at least in Malaysian case, whereby some smaller organization or university, they opt to just use a commodity internet without public IP, but they still want to I mean, they have a good number of bandwidth, because with this small subscription amount, you can easily get like up to 2 gigabit per second commodity internet access, or they don't have enough server or unsupported user database or directory. Okay, we're talking about the long tail, not the big university, because in Malaysia, the big university you can count with your finger, not that many, but the long tail is a lot, like a community colleges or uh, polytechnic and so on. So to overcome this situation, eduroam IDP as a service become a suitable solution, because they can just subscribe the service without having to worry how the complexity or the technical aspect of operating the eduroam IDP service. So during the environment project, we developed tools actually where can be used by the NRAN or the eduroam IDP operator to run IDP as a service. So in the building blocks, basically consists two things. One is the onboarding portal, where the user need to perform authentication by using identity federation or some other authentication method, and it will create the user credential or network profile that to be installed in their devices. And then the second component is the radius server. Basically, it will perform user authentication by using the credential generated by the onboarding portal or forward authentication request to the upstream radius or NRO in case of visiting a user. And also it performs authentication to the access point or for the SP. So for the onboarding portal, we use the Let's Wi-Fi portal developed by the Get eduroam project. And then we connect the Let's Wi-Fi portal with Bullet IDP for authentication. Optionally, we can limit only certain group of users, such as only student and staff that able to obtain the credential. And for the end users, they would need to install the Get eduroam app for iOS, Android, Windows user. Even now, they're starting to have for a Linux version as well to help them install the credential and network profile. Later, I will show you how you can use the Get eduroam apps to obtain the credential and also set up eduroam on your devices. So for the radius server, generally any radius server that support eduroam's roaming model and support EFTLS can be used, because the credential issued by the onboard portal will be in the format of X509 certificate. And the radius server should use the CA and server certificate generated by the Let's Wi-Fi portal for the authentication at the inner tunnel. But for the outer tunnel, feel free to use any certificate of your choice. If you want to use from the commercial CA or use the free one from Let's Encrypt, Bypass, and among others, feel free to do so. The user certificate issued by the Let's Wi-Fi portal and signed by the CA for a particular realm should be accepted by the Redis server. Otherwise, they cannot authenticate the user. So you can set additional post-authentication setting, like assign different VLAN for different user. However, during the workshop, it was beyond the scope, but in our implementation, we do it. In fact, we implement some other fancy stuff in our Redis server for our eduroam IDP as a service. So another thing, in the past in Malaysia, one of the issue or challenges when we deploy eduroam is on the password hashing algorithm, because not particularly the issue with Microsoft Windows, because at the time Windows only support the MS Chat hashing method, while many of the university they are using OpenLDAP and only store the password in the SHA-1 format or MD5 format, for example. Not many of them are storing the password in the NTLM format as well. So it becomes a big issue. Some means that some user can log in, but some user cannot, and so on. So by using this, then that problem is eliminated, because most of the operating systems support EFTLS or digital certificate. All right, so there are two ways how the end user can be onboarded. Number one, create a profile at the eduroam CAT and redirect user to the Let's Wi-Fi portal, or user directly access the Let's Wi-Fi portal. The option one is better, as the user doesn't have to remember the URL for the Let's Wi-Fi portal. The complexity is transparent to the end users. Okay, so in fact, if they are using the Get eduroam app, just simply type the university name, choose their profile, and then the rest will be taken care of by the application. They just need to follow the authentication flow. So, however, in order for this method to work, your eduroam and our operator need to have access to eduroam CAT and create an account for your organization. Okay, so this is the model that for the onboarding. So first, the user need to open the Get eduroam. Yeah. So the user need to open the Get eduroam app, and then the Get eduroam apps will download the actually it periodically download the some kind of metadata from the eduroam CAT, and then the eduroam CAT will redirect user to the Let's Wi-Fi portal. And then after that, they will need to do authentication to their Sublet IDP. So once the user is authenticated, the Let's Wi-Fi portal will issue credential, and the Get eduroam apps will configure the eduroam profile on the user device. So then after that, the user can use the eduroam. Or alternatively, the user can visit the Let's Wi-Fi portal and get with the Sublet IDP, and then after that, use the Get eduroam apps to download and configure the eduroam on the device. However, from the user point of view, the first scenario is the much better user experience. Okay, so the eduroam IDP service that we developed is based on Kubernetes, based on container, and shall be run on Kubernetes cluster, and we package them as the Helm. So if you're familiar with Kubernetes or container technology, then this solution can be used for your institution. However, if you want to set up it manually, you still can do that, but you need to install like the Let's Wi-Fi portal manually, and set up your Redis server manually, and configure the Redis server to accept the authentication from the Let's Wi-Fi portal. Okay, so for the use case, I need to change the slide. Give me a moment. Oops. Oh, it's not. Okay, so we need to jump here. Stop. Please don't hang. Please don't hang. Oops, oops. Okay. So okay, why I send the entire slide? Give me a moment. Sorry. One moment. Yeah, this one. Okay, so last year we actively deploy eduroam at the 141 polytechnic and community colleges. So this is a map of eduroam implementation in Malaysia. So we have a very good number of eduroam deployments. So probably 90% of them are using our eduroam IDP as a service. And the maintenance is very minimum because we manage the IDP for them. Okay. And then at their side, they just need to configure their access point and point that into our radius server. So it's very minimum maintenance. The reason why we do that is because the technical competency at the long tail is much less actually compared with the big university. So is that the goal is we have to deploy it as easy possible for them to manage at the site. So it was a successful implementation. So this is the current map. It covers almost all area in Malaysia. So whichever you see empty, it's not empty. It's just forest. You know, nothing there. All right. So and then for the end user, we share this one. So we provide them a training how they can use the get eduroam apps. So we prepare documentation for Android how they can install. So but this is based on the last year version. So looks different with the new one because the new one now is version 2. There's a significant difference in terms of the user interface, but in terms of function, still the same. Like this, for example, they just open the apps, search for the institution, okay, and then after that, press next, and then they will be redirected to their IDMS. So in the polytechnic and community colleges, they are using Sifulan Connect, IDP as a service. They connected to Sifulan, and their backend IDMS is Microsoft Entra ID. Okay, so we make use whatever they have. So in fact, they don't know that the traffic go through IDMS because it's very transparent to the end users. So they just log in using their Microsoft credential, and then the consent page. After that, give consent to the apps to configure eduroam on devices, and that's it. So once they see the list thumbs up, then they can use the eduroam already. So for the Windows, looks a bit different. I just need to download the installer from eduroam cat, the portal, download. So looks a bit different now in the newer version. And then same, click connect to eduroam, select the institution, login to their enterprise IDMS system, give the consent approval to the get eduroam apps to configure, and yeah, that's it. After that, they can start using eduroam already. So the account is valid for 6 months. So after 6 months, they have to authenticate again. And this is just for Apple and Linux and so on. So Also, last year we would like to set up open roaming as well at all the polytechnic and community colleges, but unfortunately, due to the recent issue with the Get eduroam apps, is some kind of like a setback to us because many of the Android devices either doesn't support or has a poor implementation of the passpoint protocol. So some device just crash. Even in the worst case, they have to reformat the device. So it means that at this point, okay, we just put open roaming aside for a while, and another issue is majority of them are using Ubiquiti, and what I heard, Ubiquiti some kind of pause or drop the support for passpoint, so that is another setback as well for the open roaming implementation. But nevertheless, we'll continue our effort. At least once they're familiar with the Get eduroam apps, that's good enough. So it means that when we want to extend it to the open roaming, they just simply need to re-authenticate themselves. Or if the device already supported, then it's already automatically configured on the devices. All right, that will be all update from Malaysia. Any question?
Thank you, Farhan. Any questions from the room? Yeah. Where is the mic? To Taurit.
Farhan,
Hi.
thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Welcome.
Actually, what I think to make eduroam popular, we need to cover the airports, because in the airport,
Yeah.
when a visitor visits, he doesn't have any SIM. He has nothing. So once he get inside the country, he might have a SIM and he can use the data service. So especially during our transit, we find that we are out of the network. Yesterday, when I landed in the airport, I was out of the network. I was taken to the interview board in the immigration department, but I didn't have any internet to search through. So actually, I was in an island. So is there any plan from your side to cover the airports? Because we have covered our airport, but once a visitor visits in some other airport, then he doesn't get it. So if it was available in all the airports, then we could allure our faculty members or students that if you take this service, your connectivity will be available wherever you travel. So whether we can look ahead or look forward to such a scenario in near future, that depends on our initiative to make all the airports covered.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we've been trying to approach the Malaysian Airport Holding Berhad, or MAHB, that operates the most of the airport in Malaysia, but so far we haven't got any positive result yet. However, because many of these polytechnic and community colleges are in the tourism area, so we see that from the login pattern, many students from overseas, like having holiday, they also get access to eduroam as well. Because I noticed why so much. For example, there's one polytechnic why the authentication from overseas is very high in that particular polytechnic. But when I check on the map, the region, it's a tourist spot. No wonder the traffic is high. And then there's one community college is a bit remote, actually, in Sabah, also has similar pattern. When I see, okay, that's near Mount Kinabalu. No wonder there's a lot of traffic from overseas users over there. Yeah, so next task is we will try again to approach the MAHB, the Malaysian Airport Holding Berhad, to offer eduroam at the airport. Maybe we try with smaller airport that as a model before we go to the bigger airport.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Hello, hi Farhan. I just want to
Hi.
ask about, is there any limitation on devices for per user for eduroam? Have you put it on your institutions for IDB federations? Like I have two devices, right? One phone, one laptop, or one pad.
Mm.
Is there any limitation you put on per user?
No, not at the IDP side. We leave it to the SP side at the moment. So I mean, if they want to limit it at the access point, feel free to do so. But at the IDP, because we're not managing the access point, they manage the access point on their own. But we only managing the Redis server, the IDP. So at the IDP, there is no limit at the moment.
are you wanting to limit the number of devices, or you're just saying,
I think about that. If I have my account and I give somebody else, okay, use this, and when you go there, so what happens?
yeah, I mean, so any abuse is tied to
Maybe
you.
sometimes it
Yeah.
happens, or
Yeah, I mean, it certainly happens, but the idea of making device-specific accounts easy to deploy means that people don't share passwords anymore. And so by increasing the value of your identity, your electronic identity, people won't share passwords anymore. And it's then easy for people to deploy, profiles per device. So, there's less of a problem. Whether a family member enrolled in a uni decides to enroll all of their household devices under their account, that's something they could do. But because you have these device-specific accounts, it's hard to know how many are going to be active at any point in time. People will have at least 3 legit devices. They might have an older laptop as well, right? So you've got a certain number of devices people will have. I think that it's diminishing returns trying to stop that from happening. And institutions could do that on a case-by-case basis if they wanted. And it's a big research project to try and work out if there's any correlation. And the whole point about eduroam is to not correlate people's identities unless there's been specific abuse. So you want everyone to have access, and you don't prejudge their use of the network until they've actually done something wrong. Now, multiple account use, that could be under your terms of service. Depends what your policy says. I presume you do have an acceptable use policy, as is required when you sign the compliance statement. So yeah, you can deal with students that way if campuses feel a need. Thank you, Farhan.
Okay.
Nothing more? Good. Hideaki's point I wanted to raise as well. Surfnet has been unable to convince Schiphol to offer another SSID. They make a lot of money. I think the current sponsor of Wi-Fi at Schiphol is ING Bank, right? You get this ING Bank splash screen portal with an advert that rolls by, and there's more money to be made from the airport corporation by displaying that advert to 52 million visitors a year, rather than the potential that some eduroam or open roaming people will not see that. And so no amount of money can change the airport's mind. Well, no amount of money that an NREN can afford can change the airport's mind. You would have to buy the rights to Wi-Fi at that location. And so I think, advertising funds your YouTube experience. It funds your Facebook experience. It's going to fund open Wi-Fi in those locations. And unfortunately, it's not good because it's not secured as a Wi-Fi service, but that seems to be the business model of airports. I think we have such a big gap in the education market to fulfill, rather than just target airports, that I think what Farhan's doing to increase deployment is a much more successful path to go down initially by getting a huge number of users. And then hopefully we can do things, more information on telemetry and people's roaming to prove that, it has wide value. As Vlad was saying, Vlad was doing the logging and the reporting back to institutions on the use of roaming, just to remind people of the value of the service. Who else wants to present? Depthi, do you want to talk about Sri Lanka? You can come up or you can grab the microphone.
Okay. Good morning. Oh, okay. Currently, actually, after that public eduroam project stopped, like stop means we want to start it, but let's see how that's going. Actually, we have created some manual to install in Ubuntu 22, but the manual is not out yet, but that is finalized. And also we have installed we try to install Let's Wi-Fi portal, but it's again in since it's on testing mode, we couldn't finish that up and finalize a manual for our institutes. And currently we are updating our IRSs, and we need to update our NRO. NRO means the OS and all, because recently our almost our all servers got hacked, but not NROs. And although some servers and sites didn't hacked, we are securing them and migrating the servers. And what else? I can't remind anything for now. And thank you. Also, Farhan, I wanted to ask you about the resources you are using for your Kubernetes. Kubernetes means you are providing your eduroam service via Kubernetes to your institutes, right?
Sorry, come again, because it was broken.
You are providing eduroam as a service, no?
Yep.
Yeah, still you are you still using that your local data center to provide ports?
Yep. Everything is running on our data center.
For those all 100 plus institutes?
Yeah, 141.
Then how many ports per institute?
How many what?
How
Sorry?
many ports, I mean?
Okay, so for the portal, one port.
2 port, right?
Yeah, only one. Because the user, they don't have to in and out anytime. So they just come in, after get the credential, then they out. They will only come back 6 months after that. But for the radius is only one server,
You mean
Because-
once at a time, but 2 ports or 1 port?
Yeah, one port for the portal and one port for the radius.
Oh, okay, then 2, right?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because but of course there are some optimization. For example, in the access point, you can enable some kind of like a caching. Okay, so means that if let's say the user is disconnected but not too long, for example like within 1 hour, and they come back again, So the access point doesn't have to check back to the Redis server as long as the credential still remains the same. So and then at the Redis side, because there is no need to check username password or check the connection to the back end. So means the process is very fast, just like in and out. That's it. So you don't have to. It doesn't take much computing resources to perform the authentication.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Karit, do you want to give a?
Thank you. I don't have any formal presentation, but I can give you the statistics in Bangladesh. Around 28 universities are connected with eduroam. I believe around 1,000 faculty members are there with eduroam account. And we have created an auto portal from which the students can activate their credentials. The credential is being held in a server which is located in our data center, and the IDP, once they make the request through the portal, then they will get a link to their email, and that email must be a valid email address from their university account. And once they click on that link, automatically a user will be created in our IDP with some like guess bdren.net bd account, and then the user will be able to get through eduroam service. So around 11,000 students have created their accounts, so they are using the eduroam. And as I mentioned before, our one international airport that is under eduroam coverage. And there are 3 other international airports. We are planning to cover those airports very soon. Probably in the next Apan, I can give you some updates. And there are few national airports. We are trying to put coverage over there also. But international airports, they are our main target. And we have recently connected 120 colleges to our network. So we are planning to enable eduroam service in all those colleges. Also, polytechnic institutes are coming up, 114 polytechnic institutes. So once they get connected to BDREN, we will be able to extend our eduroam coverage to those polytechnic institutes. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a Nepali update?
Recently, as we reached the 40 issues joined the running the eduroam, and we have created, and almost all the IDPs are maintained by the Envent cloud. So some few, 1 or 2 members has their own IDPs on their sites, and all our rest of all are in our Envent cloud. And DJNRO is running just now. And then we don't have the centralized database right now. So the concrete for saying that how many users are there in eduroam, and we are struggling on the logging problem. Some institution asks how many users are came from outside, and we don't have any portal to grab all these things. We are struggling on that part, and I think I will discuss about you also. And we tried to establish in our international airport, and it's worked for 5-6 days. Last time yesterday, we didn't see any drone there, and we talked to them to revive. And we also have document signed to deploy in the airport as well. It's quite popular right now. And it's come to the news and media as well that drone in the airport and something. And main things most of the institutions still don't have fully deployed on eduroam. One of the main problem is that And problem we are facing is the technically lack of the technically sound people to deploy the eduroam on their sites. We have to go there and do everything like so a kind of outsourcing type, but we are not for exactly the outsourcing body. And the problem we are facing are that. And next we are going to join. We are trying then our Institute of Engineering. That's government owned Institute of Engineering is also going to deploy this. And one of the good news is that. And remaining, we are still some more institutions out of the Kathmandu Valley. They just MOU with NREN, also in pipeline to deploy the eduroam. So thank you.
Okay. Do we have I saw Wakas leave. Do we have oh, yeah.
So, do you need to pay anything to the airport authority for eduroam coverage or the local ISP?
We just asked the local ISP to support the eduroam, and they agreed on that.
Without any penalty?
Yes.
In my case, actually, I have to pay something to the local ISP to make them convinced that they should put eduroam as SSID in their network.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk? You don't have to talk about the eduroam deployment if you're not across that, but do you want to talk about the situation in Pakistan?
Good morning to everyone. I also informed in first session that we have around 110 universities, public universities are connected on eduroam, and 2 private sector universities are also connected on eduroam. And in our coming phase, we are going to connecting 30 colleges in 2 or 3 years, planning to connect on eduroam. And the issue, the main is of availability of resources in the private sector universities. Sometimes they are not appropriate to connect this technology. They are using different technologies in other universities. The major issue is also trained resources in private sector. Hopefully we are 90% public universities are connected on eduroam, and there are 30 colleges which are I also said we are planned. Further, we have 1 or 2 demos also connected successfully in colleges as well. So we are promoting eduroam in our country. That is from all my side. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have an update, a local Thai update, or any other people willing to? I think not. I don't think there are any chat. Oh, there is a chat message. What does the magic chat message say? I don't know it. Let's do this. Oh. What does chat? Is chat historic? Yeah. Okay. So I will, Hideaki. Yes, I'll remind people about Slack. If you need an invite to Slack, we have a TF-IAM channel and or IAM-TF. We might rename that channel. But we also have the mailing list, and we have an eduroam channel also to involve people. You actually have representatives of the Global Eduroam Governance Committee. These are your reps. So while Hideaki said you should have been contacted about the update to the compliance statement, from at least the people I've talked to, they have not been contacted. So this is your notification, but I presume the eduroam Secretariat know who you are, and if they don't, that's a different issue. But they should follow up with you on making sure that paperwork is complete, and we'll inform them that is their responsibility, and they should do that. But they also have your local reps that sit on the governance committee, and also should be aware and participating in the appropriate mailing lists or interactive environments like eduroam Slack and Apan Slack to get access to that. Okay, so this is potentially the concluding bit, and this is why I've got all you in the room to nod your heads and hopefully agree, or say, Brooke, this is a crazy idea, it will never fly. So I think the answer to this question is yes, but I think there's actually there's a law in journalism that if you ever pose a question, the answer is automatically no, right? It's usually a clickbait headline. But I think that Asia Pac potentially does need its own confederation. So at the moment, production deployments, this is the updated map. So this should be accurate. If you do not, as you can see, Russia missing. But if you think this is wrong, that's because this is what the Global eduroam Governance Committee think your deployment status is. So if you're missing on this map, you're missing purposefully. And there's an administrative process that needs to be fixed up. You've got Asia Pac representation on the Global eduroam Governance Committee that was designed purposefully because at that point in time, we wanted to aggregate it up so we didn't have to talk to everyone. Conversely, EduGain at the time was disaggregated. Everybody got a vote. And some people bothered to exercise that and some didn't. Now the governance of EduGain has changed, and you'll learn about that in the coming days. But that's now aggregated to a few representatives for the globe, rather than every one of the 70 plus member federations that participate. So there's pilots of eduroam, but there's a bigger problem within the wider region, is that people potentially don't even know eduroam exists. So recently I went and did a campus network design and operations course with the NSRC in the Philippines, and the institution was dreaming up many different ways of doing user management on wireless, including having people give up their MAC addresses so they could do MAC address filtering, which only worked for so long until they worked out that their controller infrastructure could only deal with 500 MAC addresses. So the first sort of 500 MAC addresses got added, and then they couldn't add any more students, which it's a lot of work. It's laborious. It's a lot of work typing that in. You'll get it wrong. And then they're a campus that has 15,000 students. So they very quickly discovered it was a lot of work and it wasn't going to work for very long. Then they create splash screen portals that have a 2-hour time limit for students to try and limit use of the network. This doesn't work because even once your session times out and you've got no internet access, your computer still wants to connect to that SSID. And so if you're a long way from campus, some students were dragging the speed of that network down to 802.11b speeds because they were a long way away, and that impacts the performance of everyone. Equally, engineering, the Academy 4 building, and the library, and a building to the back of the campus all had these guest portals. So students would move around the campus to get 2 hours in 4 different locations in order to get 8 hours of internet while they're on campus. So it actually didn't, their attempts to try and do all this doesn't work, right? So unfortunately, don't do pre-shared key, don't do MAC address filtering, and don't do portals. We know these services don't work, and ultimately you have to do eduroam, 802.1x, WPA2 enterprise Wi-Fi is the only one that sort of scales. It's the only one that allows you to do a user management. And from Farhan's presentation you saw before, you can actually do this at scale with limited infrastructure. So, we have a bigger problem in the region where we have a lot of territories that don't have an NREN, and lots of schools and colleges and unis or remote campuses of unis that support those groupings of people. And they all don't have access to eduroam only because they're not here at APAN. They don't know it exists, and they don't have this conduit to participate. So if you look at the size of the community, 17 APAN member economies exist. Asia Connect project has 24 member economies, so that's a superset. APNIC has 56 economies that it looks after in the region for allocation of for number resources and AS numbers. And then depending on how you divide the world, UN Statistical Agency has this M49 data set. And so I believe there are 73 economies in the region, if you exclude those that are connected to Giant in Asia, because Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey lie in both of those, Turkey lies on both continents, but certainly Azerbaijan and Armenia and Georgia are certainly Asian, but they are connected to Giant, the European Association of Research Networks, but there is no Central Asia project anymore. So all of the Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, they're all isolated these days with various levels of deployment. We have Iran that's in our territory that do have eduroam. And so we've got some people that are right members and some people that are supported by ASREN as well. So while we've got, nominally Oman and Saudi and the UAE that are part of Asia, they're also part of ASREN. So they're excluded. So that's how we get to the 73. So there's 29 economies in Oceania. And so Australia and New Zealand have it, which means there's a lot that don't. We have 10 landlocked countries in that stat of Asia, and they have 485 research organizations that were assessed by the grid.ac project, which has since shut down. There used to be this global research identifier project, and they're trying to do an audit of organizations that produce research output. So that's a pretty high number. That's taken only from them. There is a successor project. I might even have their names up, called ROR, ROR.org. And they're trying to do a researcher identifier to take over the grid project, but sort of assess organizations that are participating in research and education. Out of 22 small island developing states in Asia Pac, there's almost 300 organizations that are listed as doing research. So there's clearly going to be many more colleges and schools that don't participate in research in this list. And then 36 developing countries out of that set of 73 that have a further 350. So this number was originally 1,133 or something, but I decided to remove the landlocked and the small island developing states, because obviously that's an exclusive list. You can't be both landlocked and an island, but some of them overlap there in their status. So there's 350 additional organizations out there that are potentially not being supported. And so initially I want to know whether you think it's a good or bad idea that we go on this path of sort of self-determination in the Asia Pac region. So we've got in-principle support from the Philippines. So I was there most recently and I met with ASTI and UP Diliman that actually have quite a bit of interest in that. Within Sweden, Anders Nilsson actually requires accounting traffic, not just radius authentication traffic. And so they use that for a lot of quality assurance to make sure that eduroam actually works. And the HPC team at UP Diliman would be very interested in participating in taking that accounting data and to try and look for faults in in eduroam deployments around the world. In our region, right? So this is a way that we can provide support and try to do stuff at scale. Because the problem is the scale is big. We know it's, well, we don't even know exactly how it's big because we haven't got a good audit of all of the colleges and schools out there. Different countries have different quality of stats on how many institutions are actually out there. I mean, even in Australia, you always are told regularly there's 39 unis plus CSIRO, but actually the raw data set lists a huge number of research organizations in addition to that. And so, you know, they're potentially not involved in the wider. Oh, we've got 5 minutes until lunch. Don't worry. Okay. Yes, I'll try and be quick. Anyway, so Timor-Leste is eduroam curious, but they don't have an NREN, except they have a legislated NREN, but it does not exist. And Papua New Guinea has institutions that are eduroam curious, but no one wanting to initially set up that infrastructure. And so my plan is to seek ISIF Asia funding so that we can look at, you know, developing a confederation and allowing running virtual infrastructure for all of these territories within Asia Pac, so they can all get access to eduroam in that same sort of model that Farhan detailed, so that they don't have to go to the extent of having to deploy infrastructure. So,
Brooke, sorry to
Yeah.
disrupt. When you said that for PNG, means there's no one want to set up the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Does it also means that nobody want to run the eduroam federation operator as well?
yeah, that is, you know, they just want to connect. They just want to have it, and they don't want to have to do anything else, right? So there's a, you know, so you've got but that's I mean, if you think about it, we're expecting some institution to step up, run a lot of infrastructure, not a lot of infrastructure, but they consider it a lot of infrastructure, just to be able to then offer it to other institutions they are competitors with. So they just don't want to do that, right? They just want to use it and see if it's valuable to them. And so what I want to do is take away the an additional barrier so it can be valuable to them without having to do anything more.
Yeah, but a catch-all eduroam NRO doesn't exist, right?
Not yet. No, I mean, that's the idea, right? That we would do it for the Asia Pac because we know the country composition, and we could run that, you know, with the infrastructure that we have in the region and with some funding.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, we also maybe I forgot. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow. But just to share, we are planning to open up Sifulan Connect for any other IDP from another country. But it doesn't mean that a university in Papua New Guinea can join Sifulan Federation. No, not like that.
Yeah.
So, for example, if they want to have, I mean, they still need to set up their own identity federation, but for the IDP, then they can use Sifulan Connect.
Yeah. So this is a two-part problem, and since today is an eduroam day and tomorrow will be a federation day, I'll revisit this tomorrow in the expansion. But I mean, if you look at the current eduroam deployment, you're expected to have this university radius server and a database of information of user identities. But as Farhan explained, and as you know, maybe you know also, smaller institutions do not have this infrastructure on site, right? And so therefore they can never the current model means they can never participate in eduroam unless someone changes that model, right? And this is the requirement of the roaming operator. This is always actually quite lightweight infrastructure, but even with, you know, these territories are just absent of someone to take on that role, which means a motivated campus can't do anything because they've got no one to talk to. And so, yeah, the idea is some campuses just have this, right? And so we should have a situation where this can talk to the cloud and work for that set of users. And then we get a better idea of how much interest there is for that territory, and do we need to locate infrastructure into that territory to make the network more resilient, right? But if there's some small island states that have, only 2 colleges on the whole island, maybe they never get or never need local infrastructure except for resilience, or we can deploy it on something very, very lightweight like a Raspberry Pi or a Nook just to support their local infrastructure needs. And then this part, which is, usually crucial for the campus, but this now sits virtually with the roaming operator and outside their network with this, simple infrastructure. So
if you follow exactly the same model that we use in Malaysia, at the university side, then they don't need additional equipment. What they need is, of course, an enterprise grade access point, but you can go for a cheaper, let's say, a cheaper brand like Ubiquiti, for example, a cheaper model like Ubiquiti, that is sufficient. So, and also technically it is possible for the IDP to work without NRO using the RedSec protocol, but they need to have the certificate from EduPKI. But the requirement to get EduPKI need to get blessed from the NRO as well. So there's no point. But technically it's possible.
Yeah. And so, we still have the people repeating all of the reasons not to do eduroam. It's too complex, pre-shared key works, and things like people don't go anywhere. And then this is a blast from the past. This is an old Java application that Janet made. They actually built this to prove to people that people do roam somewhere and not everyone goes to London. So, this idea of, you can see the flight paths of authentication. You've got people down in the southwest of England, going to Edinburgh. You've got people going everywhere. And so the thought that everyone only ever goes to London for collaboration, Janet produced this to show that there's value in everyone participating in eduroam, because you get this quite a big mesh of the movement of students and staff. The other graph they did was this volume diagram of actual usage, a concentration of authentications, and you'll see this really big blob, right? And for people who don't know the geography of the UK, you might assume that this big blob is London, and Janet did when this was first made. And they said to the students, you've got the geolocation information wrong, because the big blob is supposed to be in London, not into the southeast, right? You've got it in the wrong spot. And the students spent a lot of time checking all of their data, and it's like, nope, it's correct. The big blob is not London, but the big blob is in the right location. And what happened there was a group of 3 technical colleges all deployed eduroam, and they specialized in certain segments of the curriculum. So you didn't do advanced physics and mathematics at all of the colleges. You only did it at one. So the students would actually physically move between colleges. They wouldn't enroll in 3 colleges. They'd enroll in their home college. They would move to do courses, and they would move between eduroam hotspots in that region, which include the public library and also the healthcare services. The NHS deployed it as well. So you end up with this, a lot of student mobility in this region, causing a huge amount of authentication traffic. And Janet came to call this permissionless and innovation, right? The campuses didn't have to ask the NREN to support this kind of movement. This was facilitated because all of the building blocks had been built, right? And I presume as UK Federation rolled out, that actually having your online identity mobile as well, and being able to access the learning environments would have followed as a precursor. And so that's the sort of thing we want to see. Is there mobility out there that it can actually be facilitated by eduroam and actually prove that there is value and that there's movement because we do have academics, lots of universities run remote degree programs, fly into country and support people, both physically by turning up, but also remotely. And so we need to do a better job. I mean, we've got very capable countries in Malaysia and Bangladesh. They're going to solve the problems in their own territories very well, but they might benefit from the exchange of information, the different services that we can build to try and increase adoption even further. But there are some territories out there that just don't have the capability and are never going to be involved. So, the things we need to do is better map the territories with and without eduroam and map all of those institutions. So take a look at RAW to see if your organizations are there, and we want to get everyone mapped into something like Wikidata or RAW so we can actually find these institutions. And that helps the onboarding to try and automate that process, because we know you're already an organization. We don't have to have a human, and actually try to target all of the institutions that exist. And then work on ways of scaling this, because we need to scale joining via DJNRO and services like that without having to involve humans always in the mix. Yep, I've run out of time. Talk to me if you're interested. Ignore me if you're not. Throw eggs if they're available at lunch. But yeah, we need a way of trying to do this at scale within the region, and we need to support a set that's bigger than Asia Connect and bigger than APAN. And so ISIF Asia seems to be a good funding program, because they target so many of those territories. And then you can ask me about, what does Brooke mean by member fines? How do we fund this post the project? Yeah, during lunch. Well, are we going to come back? I guess we can talk through it and see if anyone's interested in learning more.
After lunch, bro.
Okay.
I'm hungry.
Do we have a background screen to put up here? No, that's not it. Is there a generic background? Oh, right. Okay. Oh, and everyone virtual. What are we going to do about the virtual people? Are they going to turn up as well? Like, is Farhan going to turn on his camera and appear or not? We might have to Photoshop you in later, Farhan and Hideaki. Yeah.
Are you guys taking photo?
So I don't appear twice.
Bro, are you taking photo, bro? Or no? Okay.